You wake to the sound of carts rattling down the stone-paved streets of Pompeii. The hour is absurdly early. The sky is still an inky purple, and the only light is the faintest glimmer of stars overhead. You live where you work, like most artisans. In Pompeii, your small, soot-stained back room contains little more than a cot and a shelf for your modest tunic collection. It smells of yeast and smoke, always. The walls are made of volcanic stone, Vesuvian, basalt quarried from the very mountain that looms over the city. You've done this every day for years. You're a baker, a real Roman pister. And this is the life. The air is still cool, even crisp. But inside your cramped pastrinum, the bakery, the heat is already building. The tanner's shop next door already reeks of urine and animal hides. You've long since stopped noticing. The crust is dark, nearly burnt. As expected, the loaves are hot, heavy, and slightly charred. They are branded with your bakery's seal, a legal requirement in Pompeii to prevent fraudulent sales. Bread is serious business here. Most of your loaves will be sold to neighbors, and a few bartered with the tavern for watered-down wine. You don't fear the mountain. Why would you? You pretend not to see him take a few and dart out. You always leave scraps near the edge of the bench, just in case. Times are tight for many. A boring, repetitive, physically demanding routine. You check your stock of flour. It's coarse and uneven, made of emmer wheat. He sulks. You wash your hands in a cracked ceramic basin and prepare the leaven for tomorrow. The cycle will repeat. He'll do better tomorrow. Vesuvius green, with vineyards and forest. A source of fertile soil and endless stone. You've never seen it smoke. In the street outside, the sounds of laughter and drunken shouting rise from the tavern. Somewhere distant, the ground gives the faintest of trembles. You barely notice. You grind it in a catalyst meta large, hourglass-shaped rotary stone mill, usually powered by donkeys or slaves. The price of Egyptian wheat had skyrocketed, and the forum was clogged with angry, hungry citizens. You kept baking. You nod politely, knowing she'll return anyway. There are only so many bakers in Pompeii. You stare out your narrow doorway at the bustle of Pompeii street life. The laundry is flapping above. The graffiti was scrawled on every wall. The endless passing of carts and sandals and goat hooves. Always noise. Always in motion. Quietly. Predictably. You learned then that the baker is not just a tradesman. He is a stabilizing force. People can't riot for long on empty stomachs. You don't expect it. The dough is sticky and uncooperative. The bread you make is the standard panis. Quadratistic, round loaves with scored tops for easy breaking. Functional. Dense. No frills. Just like everything in Pompeii. You do not own a donkey, but you do have one strong, sullen teenage apprentice named Gaius. They help shape the loaf and keep it from burning in your dome. Stone oven your pride and joy. You fire it up with a mix of olive wood and trash scraps. The heat is brutal. You sweat through your tunic before the sun even rises. This is the way it has always been. He's not much for conversation, but he's reliable enough. You pour water into the mixing basin, add the flour and some stale leaven from yesterday's dough, and start kneading. Your arms ache. They always do. Once kneaded, you press the dough into shallow terracotta molds. Across the street, the fishmonger begins unpacking yesterday's catch, its stench drifting into your open doorway. By mid-morning, your first batch is done. You also have standing contracts with two nearby Insulae apartment blocks where residents pool their funds to have bread delivered. It's a routine, but you are proud. You remember the great grain riot 5 years ago. Your hands are crusted with flour. When a customer enters a matron with sharp eyes and a judgmental tone, she complains her last loaf was too hard. A young boy sneaks in moments later to beg for the burnt ends. At noon, you eat stand up a wedge of cheese, some olives, and one of your own loaves, broken in half and dipped in watered wine, and always in the background that mountain. A magistrate's slave arrives to collect his daily quota of bread pre-ordered and prepaid. You hand it over without a word. He doesn't thank you. Later in the day, Gaius burns a tray. You scold him mildly. The light fades. The oven cools. The last loaves are sold. You lie on your cot in the dark, sore and satisfied. It was probably nothing, wasn't it? The day begins, as always. Before the sun has fully committed to rising, you stir from your cot at the familiar sound of Gaius, yawning and stumbling about in the dark. He grunts a half-greeting as he pours a splash of rainwater from a cracked amphora to rinse his face. Your muscles groan with the memory of yesterday's labor, but you don't indulge them with rest. There is dough to be made, loaves to be shaped, and ovens to be fed. You step into the bakery and immediately frown. The air feels ... heavier than usual. Pompeii always has a scent. Usually it's a mixture of yeast, dust, latrines, and olives. The flour this week has been inconsistent, coarser grind than usual, which throws off the texture. You adjust the water ratio accordingly. Relying on instinct, Gaius powers the grinding mill with sluggish effort, and you scold him to pick up the pace. His reply is something mumbled, followed by a sudden sneeze. You notice he's pale. Fewer customers bustle about. A nearby shopkeeper stands idly, staring at the sky. But today, there's something ... metallic. You chalk it up to the wind, perhaps carrying the briny temps from the sea, just beyond the city walls. Then you notice the faintest vibration under your feet, like the subtle rumble of a cart on cobbles, except no cart is passing. You feel it again, a soft hum in the soles of your feet. You look down, as if expecting the stone to crack. Nothing to worry about. Still, you sniff again. The scent lingers in the nostrils longer than it should. You push it out of your mind and focus on the dough. People need bread, whether the sky is blue or gray. Or indigestion, you've eaten too much cheese lately. The heat is relentless, but your pride rests in producing the darkest, thickest crusts in the neighborhood. Nothing new. She seems unsettled and fidgety, asking if your oven is releasing odd smoke. You tell her you've done nothing different. Gaius is breathing heavily, coughing now. You offer him a cup of diluted wine and a hard heel of bread, and the doves above the bakery have flown off. You saw them take off as a group just after the tremor. They don't usually do that. Other shopkeepers have done the same. There is a strange, quiet mood as though the whole city is inhaling and forgetting how to exhale. The first batch takes a bit longer to bake than usual. You wonder if the wood is damp. There's more smoke than normal. It irritates your throat. One small oil lamp tips over and smashes on the floor. Gaius jumps. It melts into nothing ore, so it seems not like ash from the oven. It's paler, softer, almost like powder. Bad dreams, he mutters. If we stop every time something odd happens, we'll be beggars by Saturnalia. You've had them too. You and Gaius both wake, rushing out into the street with the rest of your neighbors. Shouts fill the air. Dogs are howling. No time for omens. You roll the dough, shape the loaves, and prepare them for the oven. Through the open doorway, you see that the street is quieter than it should be. You glance upward. Maybe because you can't sleep. Maybe because you need to do something with your hands. The loaves are rising, and the oven is hot. You can't just stop. Besides, you've already lost sales from last week's poor grain delivery. Vesuvius stands tall as always, but now you see something new. A thin gray line, like a column of smoke. It's faint, almost artistic, like a single brushstroke in the sky. You squint. Could it be a cloud? A fire on the far slope? You shake your head and return to your work. By mid-morning, the ovens are running full blast. He asks you quietly, "Do you feel it?" You pause, not sure what he means. But it doesn't. Just nerves, perhaps. The first customer of the day, the same matron as yesterday, enters, with even more complaints than usual. Outside, you hear a hawker shouting about dust in the water from the aqueduct fountains. Still, you sell the loaves. Near noon, A tremor rattles the pottery shelf above your cot. You pretend it didn't happen, just one of the little ones. You tell him, in Pompeii, tremors aren't uncommon. The earth shifts from time to time. Everyone knows that, but the dog next door won't stop barking. You take a break from needing to walk into the street. Someone mutters about a priest seeing blood in a sacrificed lamb that morning. Another mentions the Temple of Isis had 2 statues cracked down the middle. Rumors. Always rumors. The baker's life doesn't have time for omens. Still, as the afternoon sun slants over the forum, you notice something you've never seen before. A fine dust settling on the rooftops. You reach out and catch some on your fingers. Gaius asks again, "Should we stop baking today?" You laugh, but even as you say it, you look to the mountain again. That thin gray line is thicker now. You've stopped hearing birds. That night, there is another tremor stronger this time. The sky above the mountain glows faintly orange. You return to your bakery. You're not sure why. You begin preparing dough for the morning. You don't know why. You rise before dawn, though you didn't sleep much at all. The cot felt like stone. Your dreams, when they came, were thick with smoke and fallen roofs. You chalk it up to nerves. Tremors do that to people. It's not the first time, probably not the last. You open the shuttered door to the street and are met with a sight that halts your breath. Everything is covered in ash. The bakery is still standing. That's something, but something is wrong with the air. The usual warmth from the oven now competes with an eerie chill that seems to seep in from outside. Gaius is up too, sweeping at the front steps with a broken broom, his face wrapped in cloth. His eyes are wide and silent. A fine, pale dust coats the cobbles, the carts, the rooftops, and even the olive branches that hang limp over the fence across the way. It's as if the city was dipped in chalk overnight. And still, the mountain smokes. You cough. The ash clings to the inside of your nose. A deep, growling roar that makes your bones shake. Not just the ground, the very air quivers. They're running, some with bundles, some with carts, others with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The forum is packed with shouting. Someone says the gods are angry. Another says the sea pulled back. A tower of ash and fire. Not smoke, not mustache and rock and fury. It stretches up and curls outward like a pine tree. You haven't seen it yourself, but the air is filled with panic now. The kind of panic that spreads faster than fire. You don't bake today. You throw open the amphorae and gather what water you have. You soak linen and wrap it around your mouth. Gaius does the same. You hesitate only a moment before reaching for the bakery sealed iron brand you use to mark your loaves. Why do you take it? You don't know. Perhaps because it is yours. You can barely see the other side of the road. You and Gaius push through it, heading south toward the gate. You don't feel wicked, just tired. You are not a scholar, not a priest, not a philosopher. But even you can see something is happening that's never happened before. She is holding her sandals, walking barefoot through the ash. Her eyes are wild. She doesn't even see you. Eyes blink. Ash clings to lashes. The sky goes dark as night, though it is still afternoon. Lightning flashes within the cloud above Vesuvius Eyrie. Silent bolts of light that seem to crackle in slow motion. Not just from the smoke, from something unspoken. You even need a few loaves, because it feels safer than not doing so, but there's a rising pressure in your chest. By mid-morning, people are no longer pretending. You step outside and stare at Gaius is limping. Ash has gotten into his sandals, and his skin is red and raw. You take them off and toss them away. No time for sandals. There's a thunderous sound, but it comes from the sky. You feel it in your teeth. In the distance, the mountain glows no longer a peak, but a monster of ash and light. You think of the millstones, of the cracked oven, off the shelves of mold, and then it happens. A burst, a terrible, blooming burst of blackness from the mountaintop. Like the gods themselves have split the sky. And even now, wrapped in ash, carried down roads choked with dust, You bread your hands. Labor has traveled farther than it ever had before. People scream. It's not a moment of drama. It's not theatrical. It's primal. You grab Gaius by the arm and drag him inside. You think, strangely, of your oven, of the dough still rising, somewhere ahead. There's talk of a villa that still has water. You grab bread already baked loaves from yesterday and tie them into a cloth sack. Outside, the world is falling. Ash falls like snow, but heavy, it cakes the streets, blinds the air. You pass the matrenda, one who always complained about crusts. The noise is unbearable. No rumbling, cracking, screams, prayers. Someone cries that the gods are burning the wicked. You reach the edge of the city as a black rain begins chunks of pumice, falling like divine hail. One strikes your shoulder. It hurts. A group is moving quickly down the coastal road. You join them. No one speaks. Everyone's face is wrapped. Hours pass. You walk. Your legs burn. Your lungs ache. You walk. And you do not stop. By nightfall, you are miles from Pompeii. You can't hear the city anymore. Only the wind. Only the crackle and hiss of ash landing on leaves. You hand Gaius half a loaf. You eat the other self. It's dry, dense, perfectly baked. You don't look back. Not yet. Later, when the sky is clearer and the air tastes less like fire, you sit beneath a crooked olive tree and finally turn around. Of the bakery, of the loaves that will never be baked. You do not know if you will ever bake again. But you do know this. Bread is memory. Bread is survival. You close your eyes. You wonder, when the ash settles, will anyone remember the bakers? You awaken to the sound of the bell. Not a shrill bell. Not something dramatic. It's low, heavy, and dull, the kind of sound that doesn't so much ring as it settles in your chest like a weight. It tolls from the central tower above the cloister, just as it has every day for years. It is dark. It is always dark when the first bell rings. This is matins, the first of the 8 canonical hours that will divide your day. You are a monk in a Benedictine monastery in northern England, somewhere around the year 1170. You have no possessions. You have no family. You move in silence, joining the procession of figures in identical habits plain. Brown tunics belted with a rope. Heads are down. Footsteps are soft on the worn stone. You have no name anymore. Not really. You were once called Oswin, or something like it. But now you are simply brother. The cell you sleep in is no more than 6 feet long and 4 feet wide, with bare stone walls and a straw mattress. Cold seeps in through the cracks. Silence is part of the rule. The woolen blanket wrapped around you does little against the chill. You do not speak. You see frost on the inside of the glass. There are 6 panes in your monastery's chapel. You've counted them every morning for 10 years. You light a small tallow candle, careful not to waste it. Candles are precious, and your order is poor. The corridor outside your cell is equally cold. You eat in silence, seated on wooden benches in the refectory, listening to one of the senior monks read from a dusty tome, usually a Life of the Saints or a Latin treatise on sin. You chew slowly, absorbing the Latin passively. Sometimes the reader is hard to understand. He mumbles. You enter the chapel with the others. The only light comes from a few flickering oil lamps and the dim fire of the sanctuary lamp. You sweep the courtyard, mend broken tools, and scrub chamber pots. You tend to the herb garden thyme, rue, mint, and wormwood even though the ground is frozen. Others clean the fish pond or gather firewood from the nearby woods. All, without speaking, a heavy scent of old wax and incense clings to everything. The prayers begin. Domini, labia me, Lord, open my lips. You chant the Psalms, 40 in all, in Latin, in a calend response rhythm that has not changed in centuries. You know them by heart. You must. There are no books for you. The monastery has only 2 complete psalters, and those belong to the abbot and the cantor. Your fingers are stiff, and your spine aches from hunching over parchment. Sometimes your ink freezes, sometimes your lamp goes out. You are not allowed to complain. The final 2 hours of prayer vespers in Compline draw the day to a close. There is something soothing in the music, in the flicker of the altar candles, and in the way your breath forms mist in the cold air. The prayers last nearly 2 hours. It belongs to God. You exist within the frame of prayer and labor. There is no choice. But oddly, this brings comfort. You are not troubled by the decision. Or have you simply forgotten the shape of anything else? By the time you leave the chapel, your feet are numb. Next is private contemplation, or, more accurately, silence, while you try not to fall asleep. No hunger for wealth or fame. You eat twice a day in winter, bread, mostly, sometimes dried fish, sometimes cabbage, always bland, always quiet, only rhythm, stillness, the slow crawl of the seasons. The candle sputters at your desk, where you copy passages of scripture, slowly and painstakingly, onto stretched parchment. Your Latin is slow, and your ink freezes if you don't breathe on it. The bell rings again. Lauds. The second hour of the divine office begins, ushering in more prayer and a hymn, this time with the faintest hint of daylight beginning to spill in through the chapel windows. After Lauds, but that's too grand a word. It's a thin oat porridge, cooked hours ago and now lukewarm, served with a crust of bread so hard you sometimes worry for your teeth. After breakfast comes the labor. Manual work is a core Benedictine principle. Ora et labora prae. And work. The bell rings again. Terce. Another hour of prayer. Then more work. Then sext. Then more work. Then none. Each bell cuts the day like a knife, reminding you that time is not yours. There is no ambition here. The meals are meager. You read when permitted. You copy when assigned. The abbot is old and mostly silent. His beard is gray, and his hands shake. He rarely looks anyone in the eye. You once saw a novice beaten for laughing during lauds. You have not laughed since. By evening, you are exhausted. You haven't said more than 10 words today, and most of them were at Compline. You sing the Salve Regina in the darkened chapel. Your voice joins the others, wavering but constant. This is your favorite hour. Afterward, you return to your cell. You extinguish your candle. You lie in the dark and listen to the wind outside the cloister walls. You wonder, is this what peace feels like? You fall asleep and wait for the bell. The bell tolls again, soft, somber, and inescapable. You rise before your body is ready. The chill of the stone floor creeps through your feet as you step into your sandals. The wooden door to your cell groans softly as it opens, but you don't flinch. Silence is expected. You move down the dim corridor, following a line of bowed heads in brown habits, all illuminated only by the flickering light of a single torch, held aloft by the porter. It's time for matins once more. The chapel is as cold as the cells, if not colder. You kneel, you chant, you bow, you chant again. This time, it's Psalm 88 that clings to you. Oh Lord, why do you cast me off? Why do you hide your face from me? You feel those words deeper than usual, not from despair, necessarily, but from a kind of bone-deep weariness, a difficult hand, filled with theological nuance and subtle Latin that must be copied. Exactly. You are not allowed to interpret. You are not even encouraged to understand, just to reproduce. A spiritual fatigue that comes not from a crisis of faith, but from repetition without relief. The quill is cut from a goose feather, and you must pause every few lines to sharpen its point with a tiny knife. The bell divides your life into measured slices, and you are not allowed to taste any of them. Just chew, swallow, repeat. If being cloistered from the world is really prosperity of the soul, you're not allowed to ask. His knuckles are red and cracked, and you notice the corners of his parchment are smudged from blood, not ink. He does not complain. You will not either. After the service, You return not to bed, but to your assigned labor for the early hours copying texts. You flex your fingers and look out the tiny slit window. You see frost on the bare limbs of the trees in the orchard. A raven hops along the wall. The cold wind carries its cry right into the stone. Your scriptorium is a small, narrow room attached to the main cloister, with thin windows that let in almost no light during these short winter days. You take your seat on the worn bench, your wooden writing desk tilted forward, and you stretch your fingers stiff and already numb before you've even uncapped the ink. A handful of chickens, to pigs, and a solitary donkey that has not brayed in weeks. You do not speak to them, but you sometimes hum very softly. No one can hear over the wind, and the rule is less strict when outside the cloister proper. He has been coughing more than usual. His eyes are rimmed and red. You offer him a cloth, wordlessly. He nods in thanks. The only human warmth you've shared since sunrise. Today's task is to copy a passage from Gregory the Great's Morelia in Job. You sing softly. There is no fire tonight. The stores of wood are too low. A strange sound after hours of silence. You stop and listen. There it is, again. A low, hollow call. You smile faintly. It breaks the routine, even if just for a second. The ink is thick, mixed with iron salts and oak gall. It stains everything it touches. You move slowly, conserving warmth, guarding every calorie like a miser. God's gold. You read a verse before sleep. You know them all now. You've competed them, sung them, loved them. You know there will be no meat today. There rarely is. You bend low, eyes strained, and begin. Then more work. Today's lesson is about obedience. Always obedience. The abbot nods gravely at the end. You do your duties in silence, aware that your life is not your own. Then sex more chanting. Your voice blends into the communal hum. You no longer think about the meaning. It's like breathing. You simply do it. Saepi prosperitas temporalis est in detrimento a eternitatis. Often, worldly prosperity is a detriment to eternity. The words are sharp. You wonder, absently, if this counts for monasteries too. Another monk, Brother Thomas, sits beside you. His breath comes in rasps. His older babs start by Prime the First. They let our your hands are sore. The bell calls you to prayer again. Afterward, you are given a small reprieve time to tend to the animals in the monasteries. Small. You scatter grain, shovel manure, and refill the water trough. Your breath hangs in the air like incense. The next bell comes terse. You're assigned to the garden this afternoon. The soil is frozen, so the work is mostly maintenance, untangling ropes, sharpening tools, and reinforcing the compost bins. At none. You pray again. You are tired of the Psalms. The refectory is cold. You eat boiled barley with a sprinkle of leeks. Brother Hugh reads from the Rule of St. Benedict. You have not spoken once all day. After Vespers, you help Brother Thomas repair the wooden lectern. Compline comes. As you walk to your cell, you hear an owl hoot in the dark. Back in your cell, you rub your hands together, trying to bring life back into your fingers. The candle flickers. Be still and know that I am God. You lie in the dark and wonder how still one must be to finally know. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will be the same, unless it isn't. The days begin to blur. In a monastery, there are no weekends, no festivals for common folk. The passing of time is marked not by holidays, but by feast days. For saints whose lives you copy, chant, and recite, yet never truly see. The cloister walk is slick with morning frost, and one of the novices, Brother Alex, slips there in prime and sprains his ankle. You saw it happen. A sharp gasp, a muffled thud, and the immediate guilt that comes with breaking the expected silence. Two older monks help him up. No one says a word, not even him. It is the feast of St. Cuthbert today. Or perhaps it was yesterday. You can't be sure. You've not spoken aloud in nearly a week. It feels more intimate than the usual psalms or commentaries. Less formal. There's a line that sticks with you as you scratch it out in painstaking black ink. The sky remains iron gray, and the garden is frozen stiff. Trees and stones will teach you what you cannot learn from masters. You miss it for the first time in months. You sit instead in the dark infirmary, the smell of herbs and damp wool heavy in the air. He hobbles 4 days afterward, limping through prayers. I was in a town. Warm bread, loud people, In the scriptorium, you are given a new passage to copper not from scripture this time, but from a letter written by Saint Bernard of Brother Thomas has taken ill, his cough now wet and constant. His breathing is shallow, and he lies beneath 2 threadbare blankets, cheeks flushed with fever. You bring him boiled water mixed with rosemary and vinegar. You wipe his forehead with a rag soaked in rainwater and say nothing. A simple wooden cross marks the spot. The Psalms are chanted. You return to the scriptorium by midday. You will find something more in woods than in books. It makes you pause. You look toward the small slitted window, where the top of a bare tree leans into view. The bark is split in places. You wonder what it would say if trees spoke Latin. You are not supposed to think this way. Later that day, you are assigned to help in the infirmary. He opens his eyes once, looks at you, and mouths. You see the silhouette perched on the ledge above the chapel. You're not sure why, but it feels comforting. It's the first word you've seen formed with lips in days. The straw mattress feels rougher tonight. The cold sinks deeper into your bones. You nod. No answer. You aren't allowed. Of loud towns, of the dream Brother Thomas described. By noon, the infirmary is full. 3 others are coughing now. Winter does not spare those who rise before dawn and eat cold fish with cracked teeth. The older monks sit with the sick in shifts. You offer to take Brother Thomas's next watch, and the prior nods, writing your name down in the assignment book with a dull reed quill. That night, you sit beside him. As the chapel bell tolls come, he whispers again, barely audible, I dreamed. Doc, you can't help but smile faintly. You reach out and press your hand to Hishapt, thin and trembling. You whisper, for the first time in years, you'll dream again. It feels like breaking something, a dam, a vow, but the silence around you does not shudder. It simply absorbs the sound and keeps it. He doesn't reply. He's asleep again. The next morning, he does not wake. There is no dramatic ceremony, no wailing, no eulogy. He is bathed, wrapped, and laid in the cold ground behind the chapel. You sharpen your quill. You dip into the ink, and you write. Brother Thomas, servant of the rule, obedient in life and in silence, now rests. You are not permitted to add more. That night, the owl returns. Its cry is louder, closer now. You stop in the cloister and stare upward. You return to your cell. You lie awake and think of bread. You realize that beneath the rule, beneath the silence, beneath the endless routine of bells and prayers and ink and frost, you are still human. And maybe that's not a sin. The steppe wind bites through your felt robe long before dawn. It's never truly quiet on the Mongolian plains. The wind howls. The ground groans under the hooves of distant herds. And even the stars seem to whisper above your head. A speck in the largest communication network the world has ever seen. You carry not weapons, not treasure, not grain, but scrolls, messages, royal orders, and maps. You are one of the countless lifelines, tying this vast land together from the cold forests near Lake Baikal to the deserts beyond the Gobi. But this morning is colder than most. You don't need to understand the words only to know where to take them. Your horse breathes clouds into the darkness. Your hands, even gloved in leather and fur, are stiff. And yet, you must ride. You are a Yamchi, a relay courier of the great Mongol Empire, of the gear you left behind, of your brother's wedding last week, of the time a falcon followed you for half a day. But mostly, you think of rhythm, hoofbeat after hoofbeat, mile after mile. Your orders came last night, inked in a script you can barely read. sealed with the crest of a local no. You've already checked your saddle twice, or it might be a grain inventory. You'll never know. The weight is the same either way. A stable boy runs out to greet you before you've even dismounted. He takes your exhausted horse without a word and brings you a fresh one. You gulp down a mouthful of soured milk, trade your wet gloves for a dry pair, and are off again in minutes. Your horse stumbles once but recovers. You offer a soft word of praise, more out of habit than affection. You rely on instinct, on stars, on memory. You pray you're not drifting too far west last time. A courier vanished into the high ridges and was never found. Only his satchel turned up, weeks later, carried in by a shepherd. Your satchel is tied tight. You tie your horse, stomp the snow from your boots, and enter. Your stirrups are balanced. Another courier is asleep in the corner, curled like a dog. You carry no food, only salted tea bricks, dried curds, and a pouch of fermented mare's milk. The first yam station is 30 miles west. Your current mount will never make it that far at full speed, but that's not your concern. At the station, a fresh horse waits. Then the station captain wakes you with a sharp tap. Your next horse is ready. How many riders like you eat dust and frost just to ensure someone far away? Here's what was written a week ago. There are no signs, no milestones, just distant mountains to your right, a frozen creek to your left, and the rising orange glow of the morning sun somewhere behind you. He says nothing. He just rides beside you for an hour, then veers off south at the next fork in the trail. You nod. That's all. And at the next, and the next. That is the genius of the Mongol postal system, the Yan. Hundreds of relay stations, spaced a day's ride apart, where tired riders switch for fresh mounts, hand off messages, or collapse into sleep. Without a word. You are not special. The horse snorts, eager. You give a soft click of your tongue, and off you go into the dark, across the empty plain, chased by your own breath and the endless cold. Just another link in the chain. You mount up. The leather creaks beneath you. The path is marked only by memory. You think of nothing, or perhaps you think of everything. By midday, you see the first yam station. It is little more than a cluster of tents and a stone waypost with a carved symbol, the three-pronged emblem of the Khanist mail system. Time is everything. The message you carry might be an order from the Khan himself. The second leg of the journey is Rakira, patch of loose gravel and wind-blown scree slows you. The Yamchi are respected but never envied. You sleep in snatches. At the next station, you're allowed a cut little more than fur laid over wooden boards, and you collapse for 90 minutes. By evening, snow begins to fall. Light at first, then heavier. The ground vanishes under a blanket of white. You press on. At one station, you're joined by another courier, a grizzled older man with a scar that bisects his eyebrow. Companionship is rare and brief. You wonder, sometimes, how many messages are out there? How many scrolls fly across the empire like arrows? You reach the next yam, just before nightfall. This one has a proper hut, wooden, half buried in the hillside to protect from the wind. Inside is a brazier, weakly glowing with coal. A pot of tea simmers. You sit. You do not speak. You sip the tea, bitter and smoky. You do not ask what the message you carry says, but you wonder, what if it changes everything? The next day begins before the sky shifts from black to blue. The tea from last night still lingers on your tongue. Gritty, bitter, smoky. Genghis, the thunder from the steppe, long dead now, but his vision remains. The pouch of messages is tied with seal thread, waxed to resist snow and sweat. Some are scrolls, others folded sheets, carefully rolled or stacked. You don't open them. 6 days. Enough time to gather troops, move women and children, and trap the enemy in a ravine. The messenger was promoted to a station master and given a silver belt by the Khan steward. He died a year later from frostbite. Even if you could, even if you dared, the script would be foreign. You are literate in motion, not in ink. Roads span the empire like arteries. Riders like you are the pulse. Constant, quiet, necessary. You pack your satchel, pull on a second pair of felt boots over the first, and mount the waiting horse. The endless step gives way to low hills, streaked with ice. Trees appear in clusters. Ravens perch in skeletal branches. Once you spot a fox darting across your path, all intact. She signs your log strip with a charcoal mark, records the time in a leather-bound register, and hands the pouch back. You swing onto a new horse and ride again. The horse barely flinches. He's done this 100 times before. No one says goodbye. Words are saved for those who have time. You do not. The Yam Network, this lifeline of the empire, was ordered and expanded by the Great Khan himself. You travel light, not a courier, a traveler. Perhaps, maybe even a runaway. You don't stop. Your orders are clear. Your mind begins to wander as you ride. You pass herds of shaggy sheep. There, shepherd gives you a glance and a nod. You respond in kind. Lost the trail. Nearly lost a horse. Nearly froze. A passing courier found you, tied your hands to your saddle so you wouldn't fall off while unconscious, and dragged you to stations over without a word. You remember a tale told by a Yamchi at a distant station of how once a message about an impending invasion beat the invaders by 6 days. You wonder if that story was true. You don't crave silver, but the idea of being remembered, that clings. The landscape changes as you move westward. You scan the log strip. The last entry was 2 days ago. At midday, the snow thickens again. You keep your eyes half-lidded against the wind. Your horse struggles up the pass, hooves slipping on packed snow and crusted ice. You walk beside him to save his strength. You refill your water skin. Grab a handful of dried fish from the stores, left behind, perhaps intentionally, and ride. The horse's hooves kick up soft sprays of powder that settle against your legs. The stable boy greets you with a nod and hands you a bowl of something hot. You slurp it in 2 bites. It tastes like boiled goat bones and turnip. You don't have. Your beard stiffens with ice. You don't bother brushing it away. What would be the point? His face is sunburned and frostbitten at once. He serves you tea without meeting your eyes. Barely. You reach the next Yam station. This one just a mud brick outpost with a timber roof, half sunken into the landscape. Inside the hut, the station keeper, a broad-shouldered woman with gray braids, takes the message pouch and inspects the seals. This leg of the journey is the longest, nearly 50 miles across open country. The path follows a frozen river. The air smells of iron and pine. You sing to yourself softly, a childhood song about a boy who chased his horse into the clouds. No one hears. No one answers. You wonder how many other Yamchis are out today. How many others are slicing across the vastness like arrows in flight. Somewhere along the ridge, you spot a figure. Small, hunched, dragging a cart behind him. Still, something nags at you. You remember when you were nearly stranded 2 winters ago. You live because of him. You never learned his name. By late afternoon, you begin a descent into a narrow valley, where the next Yam is said to be. The air smells different here. Heavier, muskier. The station is quiet. No horses outside. Strange. You dismount, tie your horse, and knock on the thick wooden door. No answer. You push inside. There's no one. The hearth is cold. The bedding rolled. A kettle untouched hangs over unlit coals. Abandoned. Temporary evacuation. Bandits. You don't know. The protocol is simple. If a station is unmanned, continue to the next. The wind rizzes. The next hour is brutal. The message pouch pulls at your shoulder. You think again of what you carry. Could it be a peace treaty, a warning, a simple inventory of winter stores in Karakoram? Could it be nothing at all? You reach the next station just as twilight falls. This one is manned. The station keeper is a boy, no more than 14, wrapped in skins too large for his frame. You want to ask where the others are, why the last station was empty. You don't. You rest, drink, trade horses, shake out your gloves. The pouch is still sealed. You carry on, And in the wind that follows you down the next slope, you imagine a voice asking, "Will anyone remember the ones who carried the words?" The final stretch of your route begins in moonlight. The snow has settled, finally, leaving a crusted layer across the ridge. It crunches beneath the hooves of your new mount, a compact, dun-colored gelding with a sharp mind and restless energy. You let him set his pace. He seems to know the path better than you do. By now, your body moves without thinking. Your legs cling to the saddle like muscle memory. The cold no longer stinks it, presses in like a second skin. Time is no longer tracked in days or hours, but in messages delivered, in seals unbroken, in horses change, and in trails survive. Even your thoughts move slowly. The rhythm of the yam has absorbed you, turned you into something else. Less man, more movement. Somewhere beyond those hills is the garrison fortress where your delivery ends. You've lost count of how many stations you've passed. 20, 30. You don't know how long you've been riding. The land flattens as you descend into a valley dotted with stunted trees and distant fires. The outposts of a larger town. They move slowly, their faces half hidden under felt hoods. One of them nods. Another spits into the snow. They know what you are. A Yamchi. You glance down at the pouch again. Still sealed, still tied. 3 stations past Orkan Valley. Left before sunrise 3 days past. Somewhere in that roll of parchment is a sentence that will determine who rides, who fights, and who waits. And yet, no one knows your name. You pass a caravan in the early morning. Wagons drawn by yaks, guarded by men in layered armor. They don't speak, but they make way. The station is busy, a well-built compound near a trade hub, with stables that smell of sweet hay and sweat. The station keeper wears a coat of fox fur and bears the insignia of the imperial post, a silver badge shaped like a triple triangle. You ride on. At midday, you arrive at the final yam. He greets you with the first words you've heard in days. The trail east is packed and icy, but passable. The sun gleams through gray clouds, glinting off the frozen river beside the road. You dream of fire, soft fur, cooked meat, none of which you will see tonight. You lower your head, raise your scarf, and lean forward. From where do you come, rider? You answer, your voice hoarse. He nods and holds out his hand. You pass him the pouch. His name is carved into the doorpost of the Orju station. No one remembers what message he delivered, only that he died on the return. You pass a bridge made from lashed logs, slippery. A woman hauling firewood across its stairs. As you pass, you know they'll file it away and forget it. Still, you write it. You nod. He reads it once, silently, then hands it to an assistant. She says nothing. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. Though your stomach protests, after days of milk and curds, real food feels almost too heavy. He inspects the seals. All intact. He unties the cord slowly, reverently, and pulls the scroll free. His eyes scan the script. He frowns. This must go directly to the commander. Not here. Soldiers man the gate. But when they see the pouch, they open the doors without question. You blink. Well, 2 more stations east. You suppress a sigh. Instead, you ask, urgent. The man nods, already resealing the pouch. Very. You remount. Your new horse is sleek, rested, and eager. And ride. You think of your fingers. The right ones are stiff, almost numb. Your knees ache. Your lips crack every time you speak. You think of Brother Bata, another Yamchi, who once rode 200 miles in 4 days during a spring flood. You wonder what will be remembered of you. The eastern trail cuts through lowland valleys and broken earth. By evening, you see the flags of the fortress triangular, blue-edged, flapping in the wind. The garrison is massive walls of timber and packed clay, towers that pierce the dusk. Inside, the air smells of sweat, steel, and cooked barley. A scribe takes your name, which you give only because it's protocol. The message is taken. Its seal broken in your presence by a tall man with heavy eyebrows. The commander. Double the patrols. Tonight. That's all he says. You don't ask what it meant. You are escorted to a side room, small, quiet, lined with reed mats, and with a low brazier. A bowl of mutton stew is placed before you. You are offered a cot. You sleep and dream. Not of glory, not of horses, but of parchment. Of letters you will never read, of sentences that moved through your hands but never stayed. Then next morning, you mount a fresh horse. Another pouch waits, another seal, another name written in ink you'll never see dry. You write again, because while the empire lives, it must speak, and someone always must carry the words. You wake to the sound of the city bell ringing the first hour after sunrise. Not church bells. No, the municipal bell. The one that hangs in the square of your small Italian town. It's 1492, and you are a tax collector. Not one that wins, friends. You slept poorly again, but it doesn't matter. The ledger must be updated, and the day's list of debts must be pursued. There is no delay. The collector, the Republic, is always watching, and taxes wait for no man, but a necessary one. You assess it if they hide. You return later, with guards. Not a glamorous job. Your boots are cracked. Your cloak smells faintly of must, and your ink-stained fingers are already stiff with the morning chill. You keep it to yourself. Your name. Everyone in town just calls you Ilga, then pulls a few battered coins from a pouch. Not the full amount. You take it anyway. You make a note in the ledger. Partially paid. Promised remainder next quarter. She owes a livestock levy, though her last goat died 3 weeks ago. She weeps as she tells you this, gesturing to the empty pen. You light a candle stub, squint at your ledgers, and begin your day with ink. It lists names in careful script. Butchers, millers, merchants, and farmers. Beside each, a figure. It's within your power barely, but only because her husband served in the militia 20 years back. A street urchin watches from behind a pillar. You offer him the fig. He vanishes with it before you can blink. You write it carefully. If the magistrate reviews your notes, it must look like mercy with precedent, not charity. Some paid 7 in total. Most people pretend not to see you. Some cross themselves. One spits. Not many. He owes tax on dyed hides and water usage. He is drunk, as usual, and tries to tell you he paid already. You show him the ledger. The man isn't home. His sum may be 12 answers. Instead, says his father is in Florence. They say they don't have the money. His name is still blank. He curses you, stumbles inside, and throws a single silver coin at your feet. But all of them are problematic. Stamp it. Some are overdue. Some ... vanished. 3 Porsches. If you make an error, the magistrate will notice. 1 exemption. 2 refusals. 1 absence. The office is a cramped room beneath the council chamber. It smells like damp parchment and wax. He owes 3 florins in unpaid hearth tax. Late by 2 months. You mount up and ride slowly through the olive groves. The sun slants low now, golden across the leaves. You think about your hands. Laughter. The clink of mugs. How long it's been since they weren't stained with ink. A midwife who tries to bribe you with a jar of preserved quince. You decline. Politely. You find him in his forge, hammering iron with rhythmic precision. He wipes his brow, sees you, and his face tightens. The book in front of you is heavy and scuffed, bound in leather, stained by time and fingerprints. Your task is simple. Visit the names, demand payment, and mark the results. If they refuse, you note it. If they claim poverty, you sling your satchel over your shoulder inside it. Quills, ink pots, spare parchment, a stub of sealing wax, and today's list of names. The streets are muddy from last night's rain. Chickens dart across the cobbles. Vendors shout about saltfish and onions. You keep your head down. You're used to it. Your first stop is the blacksmith Francesco. I told thee, he mutters. Business is slow. You offer him your practiced frown sympathetic but firm. "The furnace still burns," you reply. "That's taxable." He hesitates. You seal the note with a wax drop and your small copper stamp. Each seal must be recorded. The Republic is precise. Next is the widow Belandi. You nod. You know she's telling the truth. You mark the tax as exempted by discretion. At midday, you pause near the fountain to eat a bit of stale bread and dried fig. There is no laughter in your line of work, only ink. Next is the tenor, whose stink you can smell from halfway down the alley. You don't flinch. You pick it up, brush the mud away, and stamp the page. Half paid. You suspect the rest will never come. 2 more names follow. A merchant who pretends to have forgotten. When people owe, they either flatter or fight. You've seen both. Late in the afternoon, your final visit is to a farmer outside the city walls a mule right away. You arrive at the small farmstead. You don't press. Not now. You write a note, tuck it in the doorframe. Next quarter, you'll return. As you ride back into the city, the evening bells begin to ring. You return to your office. Light a fresh candle. Update the master ledger. 7 names were visited. You dry the ink carefully. Each number must be precise. You seal the ledger for the day. Outside, you hear music from a nearby tavern. You do not go in. No one invites the tax collector. You wonder, as you blow out the candle, how long before someone records your name in a letter? Forgotten and stamped over with silence. The morning begins with ink. You unseal the wax clasp of your ledger as the town is still stretching its limbs. Bells from the Duomo echo faintly across the rooftops, and the scent of baking bread drifts in through your open office window. The noise of Florence is distant to or not in Florence. It is to track it. You are in Volterra, or perhaps Lucca, one of the hundreds of small cities that dot the quilt of Renaissance Italy, each with its own council, its own walls, and most importantly its own taxes. You dip your quill and make the first mark of the day. A notation beside the tanneress name. Once, years ago, you were an apprentice. Scribe a fast one. Reliable, precise. That's what earned you this position. Not because you were well-liked, but because you were accurate. You remember his slurred insults, the stink of his workshop. You jot down his coins. Stamp a Florentine Gigliotto, bent slightly at the edge. You have to catalog every detail. The Republic insists your job is not only to collect money, which, you realize, makes you a threat. You weren't always a tax collector, and because you could keep a secret, today's list includes 3 new entries. One is the local apothecaria man named Matteo, who deals in herbs, tinctures, and hushed conversations. He owes a luxury merchant's fee for the sale of foreign remedies. The tax is small but symbolic. You find him in his shop, rearranging dried rosemary and crushed beetles on dusty shelves. His eyes narrow when he sees you. "You're early," he mutters. He did butt in florins. They were clipped at the edge. You had to mark them down as underweight. Technically, not full payment. I'm exact. Those coins came from the notary's own hand. Are you saying he's cheating the Republic? The magistrate may review it, or may not. It depends on the week and the mood. He sighs, produces the coins from a pouch beneath the counter. More than the required amount. You watch an eyebrow. A street musician plays a lute beneath your office window, and you pay him no attention. Your attention is fixed on the page before you. The name of a prominent merchant who has not paid the city wall repair tax. "For next month too," he says. You aren't a spy, but you do write everything down. You nod and make a note. His overpayment won't go unnoticed, nor will the subtle suggestion behind it. He doesn't want to see you next month. He wants space, privacy. His family hosted a feast for the local judge just last month. If you mark him delinquent, he might ignore it. If you push, he might retaliate. If you let it go, you're complicit. It contains names, patterns, payments that don't add up. Nobles who suddenly donate wheat instead of coin. Butchers who pay in full, even when business is slow. Maybe he's selling something not listed in the Republic's registers. You won't ask next you visit the tailor. But the city depends on men like you. His shop is filled with bolts of cloth, crimson velvet, dyed linen, and soft wool from Lucca. He's pacing when you arrive. You know, I paid last week, he says. You flip your ledger. Weight is part of value, you reply. You light a candle, lean over your window, and listen to the echoing streets below. He rubs his temples. You don't respond. Instead, you mark his name with an asterisk, a symbol that indicates the payment was disputed. He slams down 2 fresh coins. You stamp the page in silence. By midday, the sun burns through the mist. The market bustles. You stare at the name. He is rich. He has friends in the council. You visit his estate just before Vespers. You are greeted by a servant in livery. He doesn't invite you in. Signore Giuliani is not available, he says. You produce the ledger. He owes 8 The servant shrugs. He says to speak with the steward. And the steward is in Florence. You write it all down. Slowly. Precisely. Then you leave. That night, you copy your notes into a second ledger, the private one, kept in your locked drawer. You don't know what to do with it yet. But someday, someone might ask. And when they do, you'll have more than a shrug and a torn page. At dinner, alone in your small room above the archive, you eat lentils and stale bread. The world moves with or without you. Quiet men, watching men, ink-stained men. You wonder what your life would be like had you never learned to write. You look at your hand, the fingers slightly warped from years of pressing quills. You sigh and whisper aloud, as if to the ledger itself. How many debts are too many before a city crumbles under the weight of its own numbers? Another morning, another candle lit. A coin offered before it's due. A tax doubled voluntarily. But you know generosity, in your line of work, is rarely innocent. It is, more often, a transaction dressed in kindness. A bribe wearing a smile. Another row of ink-scratched names, balances, and stamped notations. You've begun to notice patterns. The same surnames returning every month, not always for late payment, sometimes for generosity. And still, you record it. Each debt is not just a name. It's a story. A hint of desperation, or arrogance, or decay. Some lines are already ghostly from repeated visits. One man a fisherman, by trade died last week. You wrote deceased in the margin. His son now inherits the balance. You visited the boy yesterday. He nodded, took the ledger without speaking, returned the next day with 2 small, corroded coins. The magistrate doesn't ask you to judge morality, just amounts. Today's list is lightly 5 visits, but the ledger pages feel heavier than usual, perhaps because you know them too well now. He invites you in with a flourish, offers tea. You decline. A thick-armed woman named Marta, who bakes through the night and sells warm loaves by dawn. The ledger must move forward, regardless of fairness. She owes a flour levy. You greet her with your usual nod, and she pulls out a small pouch without needing to be asked. Almost, the town bustles. A juggler performs in front of the well. Children laugh, but when you approach the stonemason's yard, the laughter fades. You accept the pouch and count the coins. 1 over. You try to return it. You marked it down. Today begins with the baker. No need for the scowl today, she says with a grin. Business is good. Even the priests are fat this winter. You smile faintly. She shakes her head. For the Republic or your trouble? You hesitate, then tuck it back into your satchel without a word. You will report it as exact. You move on, stamp it, offers you a drink. You refuse. As always, he pays in full. He always does. Leave without another word. The next stop is the candlemaker, whose books are always immaculate, whose coins are always polished, and whose shop always smells faintly of cloves. He hands you a letter, not payment, but a complaint. I've been taxed at the guild rate, he says. Yet I sell mostly to the clergy. That's ecclesiastical exemption. No courts, no weights and scales. Just silence. Would they even notice? Or would the city fall before they found the hole? You know the argument. You've heard it before. You nod, take the letter, and promise to record it. The Republic loves. Order not to sort of revealed. You, Dante. Tell them that exemption petitions can sit unreviewed for months, sometimes years if the magistrate, ISNT interested, you leave. Midday sun filters through the alleyways like spears of gold between shutters. You find the name of the noble who hasn't paid in 5 months, still untouched. You trace it with your finger. You hear it before you see it traced voices. The sound of a hammer striking, not stone, but wood. You turn the corner and find a confrontation. The stonemasons shouting at one another. One accuses the other of shorting him on wages. A foreman tries to intervene. You stand still, observing, and then someone notices you. The shouting stops. A cold silence. One of them steps forward and sneers. Come to take more from us. You don't reply. You simply hold out your ledger. The foreman sighs. It's the quarry tax, isn't it? You nod. He pulls out a pouch lighter than it should be and places it in your palm. We'll be late next month, he mutters. I'll return. You mark it in the ledger. By the time you reach your final destination, the innkeeper on the east side, the sun is setting. The man greets you warmly as you leave. He says something you weren't expecting. You ever wonder, collector, what would happen if no one paid? You pause. He continues, leaning on his broom. No, God, you don't answer. Because you've asked yourself the same question in your office that evening. You open the private ledger. You flip through the pages. So many names. So many numbers. Some are too perfect. Some too broken. You could submit this book, report it, expose everything, but you don't, because you know what happens to messengers of uncomfortable truths. You close the book, blow out the candle, lie in your bed, and stare at the ceiling. You wonder, in a city run by numbers, who will be left to count the men like you? You are not a soldier. You are not an architect. You do not wield a shovel or a spear. You are a clerk, a minor bureaucrat, assigned to a regional office of the Ming Dynasty's Wall Defense Administration. Your duty is to document the inventory, labor schedules, supply allocations, granaries, and equipment requisitions for one short segment of the Great Wall of China, a wall that stretches over 13,000 miles, just under 2 li, sealed with a chop and duplicated for shipment back to the provincial office 300 li south, barely 1 mile. Your segment, they ask about horse feed, about ink supply, about mortar quality. You eat while reviewing yesterday's copies. The right column margin on one scroll bled too close to the edge. You'll have to recopy it before sending it to the provincial courier. Standards are strict. Even the spacing of brushstrokes is regulated by the style book issued from. Driver said nothing, just a message tied to the ox's harness. But every stone, every grain sack, every spoonful of kanji delivered to the workers or guards at your post must be recorded in ink, not because it's accurate, but because your job is not to correct the wall, only to reflect it. You wake before sunrise in your assigned quarters, a mud brick room attached to the rear of the regional dispatch hut. You pour a few drops of water onto it and begin to grind the black ink stick in slow, circular motions. This is the most peaceful part of your day. Not the break itself, that is the labor foreman's report, but the expense of ordering a replacement, the cost of repairs, the number of nails used, the carpenters who perform the work, their daily ration adjustment for additional labor hours, how many kilograms of lime were used in the mortar, how many sandals were issued to soldiers on patrol. No voices yet. Each scroll is secured with red thread and weighted with a small ceramic disc. The room smells of mold, paper, and animal glue. Just the sound of stone against stone. 2 are orders. Increase lime mortars inspections and submit corrected troop counts. The 3rd is a complaint. 5 extra sacks of rice were reported at your station and were logged by the supplier. There is frost on the inside of the window paper, and your blanket smells of dust and old ink. You cough once, clear your throat, and reach for your writing kit. Your apprentice scribe, a boy barely 15, had forgotten to transcribe the amendment. You sigh and prepare an apology draft. You will correct the mistake, submit a revised report, and the apprentice, he'll spend the week grinding ink. Each must match. Exact. Any inconsistency means delay or punishment. The inkstone is dry. Your breakfast is simple. Hot millet porridge with pickled vegetables, served in a lacquered bowl chipped at the rim. You flex your wrist and look toward the far shelf there. The lacquered chest holds official seal stamps. Yours is among them. 5th rank, a modest position, but you earned it by passing the lowest level of the imperial exams. Your job is not glamorous, but it is necessary. Each month, the Ministry of War sends scrolls demanding records. How many guards are stationed at your post? How many loaves of barley bread were distributed? And how many wheelbarrows were damaged or replaced? You are expected to answer all of it, precisely, with your seal pressed in red cinnabar ink at the bottom of every page. At sunrise, the regional overseer, a stout man named Louis, with a nose perpetually red from rice wine, arrives in your outer office. 3 carts of bricks came last night, he says through a yawn, from the Shan Commandery. Unscheduled, no records. You blink, no documentation. He shrugs. He drops a scrap of silk on your desk. The characters are barely legible. A sloppy regional signature, perhaps even forged. You sigh. Another anomaly. You log the bricks anyway. Your calligraphy must be perfect, even if the truth is imperfect. By mid-morning, you are sorting red scrolls into 3 piles: reviewed, pending review, and discarded copies. Outside, you hear shouting. A wheelbarrow broke again, the 4th this week. You will have to log that too. You do not see the wall from your window, but you know it intimately. Through columns and brush, you know how many tiles were delivered last month. There is poetry in this. Sometimes in knowing the bones of a nation that others only see from a mountaintop. At noon, you pause to stretch your fingers. Your brush hand is beginning to ache. You once dreamed of reaching Beijing, of serving at court, but now you serve the wall, and the wall is endless. In the afternoon, a courier arrives muddy, irritable, and bearing 3 scrolls from the provincial bureau. Your monthly food tally had a mismatch. You frown. You remember the mistake, a delivery made late, noted by hand but not included in the formal scroll. The sun dips behind the hills. The wind picks up, dry and cold. You light a lantern. Your day isn't over. You must now begin the triplicate copy of today's summaries. 1 for your local archive, 1 for the provincial post, and 1 for Imperial Record. You copy slowly, carefully. By the time you're done, your candle is nearly gone. You press your seal into the red ink, then onto the rice paper. A perfect stamp. You look at your hand cramped, black-fingered, and wonder, will anyone ever read these scrolls? Or are they just bricks made of words, buried in the great wall no one sees? The cold is sharper this morning. Your ink is frozen in a well. Again. You breathe on the stone until a thin sheen of water releases from the surface. Then grind the ink stick with steady circles, always clockwise. You don't know why. It's simply what your old instructor taught you. The price discrepancy has been corrected and Still, your stomach turns at the idea of being noticed. In the bureaucracy, the worst fate is not punishment. It's attention. Even the guards at the wall call you simply subscribe. That suits you fine, he said. Counterclockwise ink turned sour. You've never tested it. On the shelf near your cot, the provincial scroll from yesterday curls softly inward. A thin snake of paper, an official reprimand. You prefer obscurity. You crave invisibility. You've already prepared the initial labor allocation forms. Your penmanship is cleaner than his. His task today will be to copy charts. Rows of symbols denoting guard rotations and grain allotments. You've lived nearly 5 years in this outpost. Your name has never traveled farther than the next supply station. The record shows, JN, but it was measured in Liang. We overstated the mortar weight by half. Your assistant, the ink grinder, arrives late today. He mumbles an apology, eyes bleary. You nod, but say nothing. 2 units still pending from the eastern quarry, where snow has made the road impassable. But you've met the contractor, a quiet man who delivers on time. That carries weight, even if the stones do not. Requesting confirmation of alternative route or temporary adjustment in quotas. Supply data, labor detail, incident reports. One of them, the 5th from the top, is slightly crooked. You straighten it, just a little. Correct the weight unit on last week's lime shipment. You say as you hand him a wooden placard. He blinks. The carts were weighed. The local hay is coarse this year. Several animals have colic. No, but the contractor reported it. You pause, then add, and I believe him. It's a dangerous thing to take someone's word instead of insisting on documentation. A lone traveler passes by the outer gate, but holds only a merchandise token. Nothing of military importance. You check the wall behind your desk. The roster scrolls hang in precise rows. Today's focus is stone. Your nails are permanently dark. Your knuckles are permanently stiff. You flex them once an hour to keep the ache from settling deep. Not the metaphorical kind, but actual quarried rock. Moved from mountain to valley by mule and muscle. Carted by conscript and contractor alike. Then laid in place by laborers too tired to care whether the wall they build will stand for centuries or collapse in 10 winters. You review the stone count. 17 carts received this month. 1 broken axle. 1 shipment lost in flood. You summarize this in elegant script. Due to early frost, 2 loads of limestone are delayed. His robes are creased, his cheeks red from wind. He carries a wax-sealed bundle-lotted orders from the ministry. You seal it with your cinnabar chop. The red imprint blooms through the paper like blood. Then you begin the timber report. After that, a letter to the provincial armory about arrowhead shortages. Every issued sandal, every rationed nail. You double-check the decimal placements in tax markings. You find 1 numerical error reversed character in a brick count from 2 weeks ago. It shows 4,218 stones delivered. After that, a draft memo to the ministry's agricultural division regarding mule grain rations. All wage logs. Own it. Submit a revised figure. No excuses. All brick records. Everything from the last 60 days. Your apprentice complains of hand cramps. Not out of respect, but because his report could shape your career or erase it. You offer him a boiled egg and a slice of dried persimmon. He thanks you with a bow, not just against the cold, but against the creeping numbness of repetition. Afternoon passes with little change. The guards report no incidents. Still, you must record it. 1 traveler, past checkpoint, identified by token, copper, merchant grade. Destination, through further engagement. By now, your fingers have blackened from ink. Not stained, but ink. You once dreamed of the Hanlon Academia place where scholars wrote poems for the emperor. Not grain tallies for a wall that no one would ever finish, but the Hanlon has no use for tax scrolls, and this is what you're good at. Before dusk, a junior inspector arrives. He speaks with practiced boredom. The magistrate requests ledger verification. You nod, already rising. The apprentice looks nervous. We'll need to prepare the summary scrolls. You say, and the discrepancy list. You offer tea to the inspector. He declines. They always do. You spend the next 4 hours comparing log strips to master scrolls. Every cartload of grain. It should be 2,148. A simple slip, but enough to imply fraud. You frown, then carefully draft a correction memo. You logged a mistake. You do not lie. You know clerks who did. They don't write anymore. When the inspector leaves, you bow deeply. The fire in the brazier is almost out. You rub your fingers together, trying to find warmth. You wonder, how much of the wall was built by stone, and how much by ink? By the 3rd day of the inspection audit, Your eyes blur with numbers. Your fingers are cracked and black at the tips. The apprentice has taken the grinding ink with his sleeve wrapped around his hand, just to shield his skin. Still, you continue. Scroll after scroll, entry after entry. You verify that every recorded stone, every labor shift, every ration of millet corresponds to the correct seal, the right date, the approved ink formula, and the authorized hand. The wall, as the Empire understands it, is not made of bricks and towers. It is made of scrolls. And you are one of its masons. Today, you review construction reports submitted by the bricklaying foreman. You nod and send your apprentice to fetch the ledgers. It will take hours to match. You begin immediately. Each one is documented with symbols, shorthand entries for mud overflow, stone break, laborer unfit, tool damaged, and reinforcement ordered. The notation was small. Rest recommended. Returned next shift. You never met the man. You don't know his name. The records are efficient, tight, and unemotional. You have seen 4 reports of injury this month. 2 were work-related falls, 1 a heat stroke during lime mixing, and 1 quietly written. A collapsed laborer from exhaustion. There was no formal order for it, but you've seen the extra millet sacks go out. He says nothing. Neither do the guard. No one wants to delay the warm food during snow patrol. But his mark is in your book. The inspector arrives late in the morning with a new request to reconcile your scrolls with those kept by the local garrison quartermaster. Or you could annotate the discrepancy and flag it with a humble note. As you match ration counts to guard duty rosters, you find something troubling. A discrepancy. 42 rations were recorded by the guards. Adjustment noted. Awaiting retroactive approval. You only show 38 distributed. His face gives nothing away. He nods and seals the page with his stamp. He moves on. You send a messenger west to the quarry station. A 14-year-old boy who carries your scroll in a goatskin pouch tied to his waist. It's not theft. You know the cause. The night cook, Old Shen, sometimes prepares double meals for guards assigned to night patrol during high wind warnings. But now, it's an inconsistency. You pause. You've performed this act so many times. Your fingers complete it unconsciously. The paper folds and breathes like cloth under your touch. Their shouts echo, but you barely register them. Do you report it? You could adjust the figures, correct them manually, but a neighboring one. The delivery still arrived. The materials were still used. But the paper trail says those bricks never existed. You choose the latter. For additional rations distributed on high wind patrol evenings. No standing order present. You write it plainly, with no apology. He has 5 other outposts to check before the season turns. Either way, it could end a career. You roll up your last scroll and place it in the lacquer tube. You tie it with a red string and place it on the outbound shelf. Or several. In this job, transparency is armor. The inspector reads it silently and write down the seal patterns. It's not your place to accuse. But someday, if someone asks, you will have the paper. You think of it as a series of facts, a ledger without end, a scroll that keeps being written by hands like yours. In the afternoon, you update the stone inventory chart. A delivery expected 2 days ago has not arrived. You instruct him twice to protect it from water. He nods seriously, bowing low, then vanishes into the pale hills on foot. While he's gone, you repair a frayed edge of the main ledger with rice paste and silk thread. Outside, the wind rises. You hear the flags snapping above the wall towers. Watch dust swirl across the courtyard. A group of guards drills with wooden spears. You are reviewing an annual supply order. You notice something odd. Last spring, this outpost requested 5,000 bricks, but the official approval stamp bears the wrong mark. Not your commandery. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with wind. This is a major flaw. It could be a bureaucratic error, or it could be falsified to conceal misallocation. You hesitate, then pull out your private log. You note the inconsistency carefully, without conclusion. Evening falls. and with it, the audit ends. The inspector stamps his final note and departs without ceremony. You return to silence. Your apprentice sweeps the floor. It will be picked up at dawn. You pour yourself tea, weak and bitter, and sit alone in the stillness. You think of the wall, not as others do, not as a barrier, a monument, a dragon of stone crawling across the mountains. You have never touched a spear, never stood atop the highest parapet. But your work keeps the soldiers fed, keeps the stones ordered, keeps the empire's illusion of control intact. You sit there, long after the candles burn low, and whisper aloud. Will they remember the ones who guarded the wall with ink, not arrows? You live on Rue Saint-Denis, in the northern quarter of Paris. The year is 1793, and France is at war with itself. Your name is Etienne Machang. You are a cobbler. You mend boots, hammer soles, and sole leather with waxed cord. You work from a small shop built into the side of your cramped apartment, a crooked little place, half wood, half brick, fully drafty vat smells, perpetually of glue, tallow, and dust. Men with wild eyes and tricolor cockades who pay in assignats the new paper money printed by a government that changes monthly. You've worked here since you were 17. Now you're past 50. You know nothing else. But the world has changed. Your clients once included minor noble stiff-jawed gentlemen who paid in coins stamped with Louis XVI's face. They are gone now. Some have fled. Some have been arrested. Some you never ask. Now, your customers are soldiers, sans-culottes, neighbors with red ribbons on their hats. The streets echo with shouts, with drumming, and with the rolling of carts that carry prisoners to the place. The shutters are always closed. The door creaks on its hinges. The floor is uneven, and in one corner sits your bench-low, worn, polished smooth by years of use. Your tools hang neatly on the wall. Awls, hammers, cutters, and bone knives. You clean them every morning, even if no one comes. He slams them on your work table and demands a rush job. You try not to look when they pass. You try not to count the heads on the carts when they return. You don't talk politics. You mend boots. You keep your head down both figuratively and, these days, literally. Outside, Paris is loud in a way it never used to be. Your shop is small, but it is safe for at least. It feels like it is. You still polish the boots of ghosts. Just hands you a pair of scuffed leather shoes. Her son Est, and asks for them to be Her hands tremble slightly as she passes the coins. This morning, the first visitor is Her husband was arrested last week. She says nothing of it. You take them? You do not speak. Later, a young man in a National Guard uniform arrives. He smells of sweat and sour wine. His boots are caked with dried mud and something darker. By tomorrow, he says, hammering nails into a booth. You heard the noise. Thought it was just another fight. It wasn't. That night, a boy ran past your window waving a bloody shirt on a stick. You stitch Madame's son's shoes by hand. Slow, precise, careful. You wonder if the boy is still in Paris. You wonder if he's wearing wooden sabots now, like so many others. He shouted something about freedom. You kept your shutters closed. You nod again. He glares at you. You're quiet, old man. You shrugged. He smirks. Good. Quiet men live longer. How many souls were the last thing a condemned man felt before the blade fell? You work through the afternoon with your shutters half drawn and your ears open. You hear gunfire in the distance perhaps. An execution. Perhaps something else. You no longer try to guess. There are rumors, always rumors. That Robespierre will fall. That the guillotine will stop. That Paris will be quiet again. You don't believe any of them. You believe in shoes, in soles worn thin from running, in seams split from marching, in leather torn by the cobblestones of revolution. You remember the day they stormed the Bastille. You were in your shop. You never opened them again. Evening comes, and you light a single candle. You used to make dancing shoes, soft leather, polished, elegant. No one asks for those anymore. Only boots. Always boots. You sit, bent over your work, and wonder how many of your shoes now sit beneath scaffold platforms. You do not cry. You do not pray. You only step outside. The street grows quiet. Then you hear it. The rumble of wheels. The creak of an ox cart. The low, rhythmic clatter of wood on stone. You blow out the candle. You sit in the dark. You wait for it to pass. It does. A moment later, a voice calls from outside. Justice has been done. You do not respond. You watch the flicker of torchlight under the crack in your door, and then silence. Eventually, you light the candle again. You pick up your awl, and you return to the work, because in times like these, shoes matter more than words, and cobblers must never be heard, only felt beneath the feet of those who walk toward history, or into its jaws. The days bleed together. You mend soles, stitch seams, polish boots, patch heels. Each task is a rhythm. Steady, mechanical, safe. You avoid conversation. You avoid looking people in the eye. You avoid using names. Names now are dangerous. One day a man is Citizen Legrand, a proud Jacobin in blue trousers with brass buttons and endless opinions. The next week, he's arrested for counter-revolutionary murmurs, and his name is never spoken again. When someone addresses you in the street, if they must, they call you Corday Cobbler. In 1793, names are blades, and silence is armor. Your name, Etienne, rarely leaves your own lips. That suits you fine. This morning, your first visitor is a pale-faced girl, no older than 16. She clutches a pair of scuffed leather shoes, far too large for her feet. You recognize them immediately. They belonged to her brother, Henry. You hadn't seen him in weeks. She does not speak, just sets the shoes down and waits. You glance at her. She nods. You take the shoes. You don't leave the shop. You haven't walked more than a few blocks in months. Not since the prisons began filling. Not since the tribunal began calling cobblers, tailors, barbers, anyone accused of harboring loyalty to the old regime. You don't ask. You already know. You kept the receipt. Foolish, perhaps, but you liked the handwriting. He's thin, tall, with sharp cheekbones and a powdered wig that's gone out of fashion. He removes a pair of fine leather shoes from a wrapped cloth. They're delicate, aristocratic, buckled with silver, though one buckle has been torn off. 2 pairs of infantry boots need hobnails replaced. 1 pair has dried blood in the stitching. You don't mention it. You don't look closely. She leaves without a word. You set the shoes aside, carefully, reverently, and continue with the day's work. At midday, you eat bread and hard cheese while sitting on your workshop stool. Maybe years. They smell faintly of rose oil, perfumed feet, a luxury long dead. You once sewed a pair of ceremonial slippers for a marquis's daughter, years ago. Last week, you burned it. That afternoon, a man you don't recognize enters your shop. These need ... Simplifying, he says quietly. You glance up. He doesn't meet your gaze. He places a coin on the table. Real silver, not paper ass. Then he says it. No one must know. The neighbors, the friends, even the gossiping ones. Gone, one by one. You nod. The coin is cold in your palm. You understand. The man leaves, quickly, almost guiltily, all in a mound. Beside the scaffold, stripped from the feet of the condemned, you examine the shoes under candlelight. The soles are pristine. These haven't walked in months. You unpick the silver buckle. You dye the leather darker, muddy, brown, humble. You scratch the polished finish. With your awl, you scuff the toe with a stone. You resew the strap and patch the inner lining. You wipe away the blood you hadn't noticed before. By dusk, they look like a common laborer's shoes. By morning, they'll be gone. You won't ask who he was. The bottle is hidden beneath your bed, a gift from a man who once asked you to reinforce his riding boots with brass tacks. And try to forget the names that once filled the street. He left Paris 2 months ago. Or at least, he said he would. You don't need to know. Later that evening, your neighbor, old Madame Fournier, knocks on your door. She speaks through the wood, her voice low. They arrested the printer, she says. He was accused of spreading royalist songs. You knew the printer, a quiet man, sold blank parchment. You bought thread from him once. You say nothing. She doesn't wait for a response. She just moves on. You think of the people disappearing. You think of the shoes they left behind. Sometimes, you wonder what happens to them. You imagine a pile, somewhere out near the place. Dilla boots, shoes, sandals, sabbats. You wonder if your stitching still holds when a blade falls. You wonder if anyone notices. You drink a little wine that night, just a splash. You haven't seen him since. You sit by the candle, inspecting Henry Schuster, brother of the girl who came this morning. When you finish, you wrap them carefully in cloth and place them near the door. She'll be back. They always come back, eventually. For what's left, the work, at least, remains. In this city of smoke and silence and shouted names, your thread still ties things together. Tomorrow, someone else will knock. Tomorrow, more shoes will arrive, and all you'll do all you've ever done is listen to the silence of leather under your hands. The winter deepens. Snow mixes with soot in the streets of Paris, turning to gray slush beneath boots and cartwheels. The wind carries voices, shouts, rumors, proclamations, condemnations, all flung through alleyways like daggers. You keep your shutters closed. You keep your fires small. You keep your head down. But still, they come. Your workbench is cluttered with boots, many half-finished. The tools you use have worn smooth from your hands. The leather scraps are stacked neatly in a bin. Beside the jar of pitch, you warm gently each morning over the coals. Her apartment is silent. The shutters remain shut even at noon. You suspect the worst. You do not ask. You do not investigate. The scent of warm hide and glue masks. The stench outside. Madame Fournier has stopped knocking. You simply mend a pair of children's shoes that belong to her granddaughter. You'd been meaning to fix them. Now, you finish them with extra care, polished and wrapped in linen. You place them on the sill, just in case. You see his fingers, rough in a way that suggests paperwork, not war. That morning, a tall man in a heavy wool coat steps into your shop. His eyes are sharp, his jaw clenched. He's younger than most of your visitors, but his hands are stained with ink, not soot. He places a pair of riding boots on your bench. They belong to my father, he says. You nod, waiting. He won't be needing them anymore. You think of all the things these boots may have walked through. Streets filled with fire, market, stalls, courtrooms. Then he adds, we won't forget the ones who worked in silence, or perhaps just a long, quiet walk to the scaffold. You understand, he doesn't ask you to mend them, just to clean them. You polish the leather slowly, smoothing the creases with beeswax, buffing the heel until it gleams. For weddings, dances, parades. The man doesn't speak again. When you're finished, he takes them under his arm. Thank you, he says softly. He disappears into the snow. You stand there for a while, watching the flakes drift through the crack in the shutters. Torches, heavy boots. You move to the window, just far enough to glimpse the outline of soldiers escorting a man in a nightshirt and coat. The candle on your workbench flickers. You sit and you continue. The girl, Henry's sister, returns that afternoon. She doesn't knock, just enters quietly and lifts the wrapped shoes from the corner where you left them. Her eyes are red, her hands steady, loud, demanding. You want to say something, anything, but you don't. She leaves a single coin on your bench. Copper, light. You tuck it into the drawer with the others. It's not about payment anymore. Hasn't been for months. You remember a time when people asked for fancy shoes. Now they ask for quiet repairs, for discretion, for soles that do not slip on wet cobblestone. You don't make dancing shoes anymore. That night, you wake to the sound of shouting in the street. Someone on your street. She said it with too much weight. You understood. You gave her thicker soles. You reinforced the heel. You don't recognize him. A neighbor maybe, or a cousin of a neighbor. The soldiers pound on the door across the lane. Then silence. You blow out your candle. You sit in the dark. You wait. At the end you turn, startled. He grins. Still making boots, but they do not knock on your door. Not tonight. In the morning, the cart passes. You don't look. You stitch. One of your last commissions. A pair of walking boots for a woman who claimed to be headed south. She paid in silver, wrapped in cloth. You never saw her again. Now, as the snow melts in spring, as the air lightens and rumors swirl about Robespierre's fall, you feel the change begin. Slow, uncertain. The hammering of boots continues, but the shouting lessens. One morning, you step out. For the first time in weeks, you breathe. You look up. The sky is blue. It stuns you. A man calls your name. You nod. He doesn't ask anything more. No one does. History moves forward, fast and loud, like a carriage in full gallop. But you are the cobbler. You do not run. You do not shout. You do not write pamphlets or deliver speeches or lead revolts. You just mend what is torn, soften what is hard, and patch what has been worn down by walking too long in a city that forgot how to stand still. You look at your hands cracked, stained, tired. You smile faintly, because revolutions may change the rulers, but someone still has to fix the shoes. You rise before the sun, not because you want to, but because the priests do. And when the priests are awake, so are you. You are a junior scribe in the temple complex of Uruk, deep in the fertile crescent of southern Mesopotamia. It is sometime around 2100 BCE, during the rule of Ur-Nammu, or perhaps his son. Time is a fluid thing here. You track it not with calendars, but with harvest cycles and tablet logs. You know it is spring because the barley is thick and the sheep are restless. You haven't slept more than 4 hours in 3 days. Your cot is nothing more than woven reeds and worn wool. Your bedmates include insects, heat, and the ever-present scent of wet clay. The stylus is made of reed, trimmed to a wedge at one end and a point at the other. You carry two, one for writing, one for making corrections. A merchant is arguing with the grain steward about a miscount. A priest chants something about celestial alignment. A bull lowing from the pen makes your ears ring. The city is alive, but you are mostly numb. You dream in cuneiform, lines and wedges, overlapping impressions that blur into each other when you blink too fast. You kneel on a cushion that est lost all its shape and begin transcribing an old hymn to an... You don't know what the words mean anymore. You just know where the marks go. He says nothing but pauses long enough to inspect your work. You feel his gaze on your neck like the heat of the noon sun. You stretch, wash your face with lukewarm water from a communal basin, and begin the day by gathering your tools. Stylus, board, sponge, a basket of blank clay tablets, and a cloth to keep the dust away. You wear a linen kilt, sweat-stained and sun-bleached, and sling your tablet basket over your shoulder. The temple courtyard is already buzzing. You recognize a script, an old land contract, half legible. You'll need to reinscribe the entire thing from scratch. A boar rushes in, one of the temple runners, and hands you a broken tablet. Your first task. Copying. Always copying. You are not yet trusted to compose original texts, only to duplicate the works of those more senior. Hymns, tax records, inventory tallies. To white oxen, 1 black sheep, 6 jars of beer, some in Sumerian, others in Akkadian. Your wrist already aches just thinking about it. You settle into the scriptorium, a shaded corridor lined with red mats and low benches. The stylus makes soft clicking noises as it presses into the wet clay. Tick, 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 you help lift it off him. He thanks you with a crooked smile and says, "The gods made scribes with weak arms but strong backs. Each line must be perfectly spaced. Each character is sharp and clean. Smudge a mark, and you must start over." A senior scribe passes behind you. He walks on. He says he brought 5 jars of oil, not 4. You check the original tablet. He's lying. Salty. Dry. You place them in the sun, on a drying rack beside the kiln. They harden slowly, their characters locking into permanence. Your seal is plain. No animals. No kings. Just a pattern of dots and lines. You chew without tasting. Your eyes close. Just for a moment, you exhale. By a minute, you wipe sweat from your brow. The clay sticks to your skin in gray smudges, cracked in the sun, he says, panting. Needs restoring. You take the shards. You press too hard and leave an accidental gouge. You start over. Again. You resist the urge to curse aloud. You add it to your growing pile. The high priest arrives an hour later, with a list of livestock to be logged for sacrifice. He dictates quickly, impatiently. 7 goats. You etch each word into clay as fast as your hand allows. He does not wait for confirmation. He simply leaves. You dry the tablet in the sun, watching the characters harden into permanence. Another piece of bureaucracy, immortalized in dust. You wonder, will anyone ever read this again, or will it crumble into nothing, buried beneath centuries of sand? At midday, you eat flatbread dipped in fish paste. A shout wakes you. The grain scribe has dropped a sack of barley onto his foot and is howling in pain. You smile. By afternoon, the air turns thick. The clay dries too fast. Your stylus slips more than it sticks. A priest's assistant arrives with a list of dream interpretations to be recorded. One tablet reads, "The man dreamed of a black bird flying backwards over a river. This is a bad omen. His daughter will marry far away." You don't question it. You just write later. A merchant comes to complain that the record of his trade agreement was missed. You say nothing. You just write a new record with the correct number and stamp it with today's date. Your final task before dusk is to fire the day's clay tablets. You mark each with a cylinder seal, the carved roller that leaves behind a signature imprint of your department, your legacy. When the sun sets, the courtyard empties, the chanting fades, the scribes drift away. You carry your tablet basket back to your cot. Your fingers are stained with dust. Your eyes sting. You fall into your bed and stare at the ceiling. You try to remember what day it is. You cannot. All you know is tomorrow. You'll wake up and do it again, because someone must write the world down before it forgets itself. And someone must count the sheep, even if no one remembers who held the stylus. The rooster crows before your body is ready. Your back aches from sleeping on woven reed. Your fingers are already stiff. The dull soreness of repetition that never quite goes away. You roll to your side, hoping for a moment longer of silence. Then you remember. Today is market census day. You groan quietly. The basket hangs from your shoulder like a yoke, a reminder that your burden, though not as visible as a porter's or a soldier's, is just as heavy. You rise, splash water on your face, and take your styluses, 3 of them today, and a new bundle of blank clay tablets. The streets of Uruk are stirring. The smell of cooking barley porridge wafts from a low table waits, stacked with tablets from yesterday's inventory. You must review them, update missing marks, and most tedious of all, record this week's merchant figures. At one end, a priest's assistant is shouting names. At the other, a guard stands with arms folded, his club at his belt. Women carry baskets. Merchants begin to shout prices. Children chase each other around bundles of reeds and pottery jars. Blame the it leaked. The air smells of warm earth, damp reed, matting, and smoke. You make your way to the market square, a rectangular clearing between temples and stalls. bounded by walls painted with faded murals of gods and beasts. The clay on your table begins to dry too quickly, cracking before you can complete entries. You cover the newest tablets with a damp cloth and place them in the shade. Your forearms are streaked with grit and sun. You double-check the weight indicated on the delivery slip. It looks smudged. You frown. The tempo counted it later, but the delivery happened after your record closed. Ask the merchant again. You find your assigned place beneath a sun-dried fig tree. Today's task: assess incoming and outgoing goods for 29 market stalls. You begin with the oil sellers. 3 amphorae of sesame oil. From Lagash, says the trader, wiping his forehead. You press the stylus into the damp clay. A wedge for 3, a symbol for amphora, then the seal for Lagash. He shrugs. You no longer remember what rested hands feel like. You nod, but note it anyway. Wait, suspect inspection required. 2 merchants, both waving tablets, arguing about whose scribe is correct. The next merchant sells dyed linen, 6 bolts, she says proudly. Indigo, straight from Susa. You glance at the fabric and run your hand across it. Other scribes sit hunched over clay, the scratching of styluses echoing like insects. Adjusted quantity: 30 baskets of barley. Southfield. Your stylus glides across the clay. You do not add that the mistake was not yours. Such things are implied, never written. Next. Fish. Den dates. Each one must be summarized, checked, and cut. Then sandalwood from who knows where, smuggled in under another name. You don't ask questions. You log everything. Your stylus dulls by mid-morning, so you sharpen it with a chip of obsidian kept in your pouch. You flex your fingers, then you write again. By noon, the sun is high and cruel. A priest approaches one of the junior temple scribes. He speaks without greeting. We have a complaint. The grain tallies don't match. Carefully, you trace a single wedge mark with your thumb. Lovingly, the sound they make stone on stone is quiet, but final. You blink. Which record? Last week's. You logged 25 baskets from the South Fields. The temple steward claims 30. You already know what happened. 1 cart was late. Still, it's your name on the tablet. You nod. I'll add an amendment. Notation: delay. The steward wants a full replacement tablet. You suppress a sigh. I'll write it tonight. He leaves without thanks. You eat late dried figs and barley flatbread, washed down with water that tastes faintly of clay from the jug. You sit in the shade of a low wall and let your fingers rest. 1 nail is chipped. Your knuckles are tight. You hear shouting, a fight over an ox's weight. You watch. You do not intervene. By late afternoon, you return to the scriptorium to copy delivery logs from the market. The chamber is thick with dust and old sweat. Your own stack of tablets waits, 10 thick slabs of information. And then you must rewrite the grain tally. You set aside the original and begin the new version. You write correction to previous entry. Full delivery confirmed. You sign with your seal. You do not add that the steward delayed the count. Afterward, you begin the monthly transfer recordadol, but mandatory summary of all goods exported from Uruk this cycle. 3 lines in, your stylus snaps. You stare at the broken reed in your hand. You don't move. Then, slowly, you reach into your pouch, take another stylus, and continue. The sun sets. The last of the scribes files out. You're alone, save for 1 elder, bent over a mathematical tablet, whispering to himself. You finish your final entry and gather the tablets for drying. You place them on a shelf near the kiln. You wash your hands. The water turns gray. Your palms look older than they should. Tomorrow, someone will read this tablet. Or maybe they won't. Maybe it will sit in the archive. Maybe it will be lost to a flood, or fire, or time. But for now, it is perfect. A memory etched in mud. And for now, that is enough. The night wind slips under the reed mats of your doorway. It carries sand, the scent of distant fires, and the whispers of conversations you are not meant to hear. Somewhere nearby, a woman cries out. A man shouts back. Then silence. The city exhales, and so do you. Your mind races. You try to sleep. You cannot. You roll over in your cot, pressing your cheek into the warm mat. So, you get up. You strike a flint, light a stub of oil lamp, and sit at your low table. You unroll a tablet you had tucked away. Not official. Not part of the day's duties. It's one of your own. Something private. A personal record of thoughts, observations, questions you dare not speak aloud. You press your stylus into the clay. You write, "Why does the temple scribe count the sheep that the herdsman swears by the gods do not exist?" You chuckle softly. It's a joke. A dangerous one. You carry yesterday's hardened tablets to the archive room. A dry chamber behind the main scriptorium lined with shelves, stacked floor to ceiling with baked and sun-dried clay. It's cooler here. Quieter. Only trained scribes can read the full system. Most others see only a wall of meaningless bricks, a contract for a land grant from a forgotten governor to a farmer's son. You wonder if that son had children. His robe is spotless. His hands are clean. He sits without greeting and begins dictating. If that land still grows barley, or if it was swallowed by dust and red years ago, you nod. He nods back. You erase it before it hardens. Inside is a list of inspection items, trade tallies, building permits, and an odd request. An inventory of all scribes assigned to the temple precinct. By dawn, you're back in the courtyard. The sky is the color of old linen, and the air smells of damp stone. Here, knowledge sleeps. You place the tablets into their assigned slots. Each has a code. Part date, part topic, part department. You pause to read a tablet near the back wall. It's old. The edge is worn. The seal. You finish it with a wax seal and hand it to the runner, who bows and vanishes. You return to your desk. A priest enters. 2 goats, sacrificed at dawn. 1 jug of beer, poured out. 2 baskets of figs, placed before the altar. Incantation for healing. Repeated 3 times. You write slowly, methodically. He speaks faster. You write faster. By the time he finishes, your stylus is worn blunt. He leaves. A moment later, a palace runner enters. Dusty, breathless. Orders from the city governor. They shout, spit. One throws a sandal. The other says his grandfather planted a tree beside it. A temple guard breaks them apart. You rise, accept the scroll tube, and unseal it carefully. You pause. You are being counted. That has never happened before. You send your apprentice to fetch the scribe registry. When he returns, you begin compiling the list. Name, training level, departmental assignment, handwriting sample. The work takes all morning. You sit in the stillness. For the first time, you wonder if your role, your quiet ink-stained life has become visible. You do not want to be seen. It arrived yesterday. You hadn't opened the box. You want only to record, to document the present. Ancient, barely legible. You can make out only 1 line. To preserve the past, to create something permanent in a world that forgets quickly. That afternoon, a commotion erupts in the central courtyard. You brush them clean, line them up on a reed mat, and place them outside the door to dry. You check each wedge, each mark, each seal. 2 men are arguing over ownership of a storage shed. You are summoned. You arrive with your stylus and a blank tablet. I was not remembered. I did not speak. I left no name, but I left marks. They each swear the shed belongs to them. One says his grandfather built it. You ask for witnesses. There are none. You asked for prior records. The archive shows none. You sigh. You write, dispute, unresolved, awaiting judgment. Occupancy you stamp it. It is not justice, but it is documentation. And an uruk. That is almost the same thing. As the sun begins to lower behind the temple spires, you gather the day's completed tablets. You run your finger over one inscription. A list of trade goods delivered by boat from Akkad barley, One item catches your eye. One reed box containing unknown objects. You frown. You remember the delivery. You retrieve it. Inside are clay figurines, animals, gods, a small, crude lion with sharp teeth, and at the bottom, a fragment of a broken tablet. What is written in clay may last longer than the stars. You hold it a long time. Then you place it gently on your desk. You sit, pick up your stylus, and begin writing again. Not for the temple, not for the city, for yourself. Today, I recorded disputes. I listed goats. I corrected a steward's error. I listened to shouting and answered with silence. You press your seal at the bottom. No one will read it today, but maybe someone will. 1,000 years from now. And maybe, just maybe, they'll know that once a tired scribe tried to hold the world still long enough to write it down. London, 1851. The air above ground smells bad, but underground, it smells worse. You are a sewer man, a flusher, to be precise. Part laborer, part ghost, part human rat. Your job, to descend into the twisted, brick-lined underworld of Victorian London's expanding sewer system and make sure it keeps flowing. Your name isn't recorded anywhere official, just a mark in the payroll book. Beside the words able-bodied, willing, you begin the day before sunrise, pulling on thick wool trousers, a loose undershirt, and a leather smock crusted with filth. Around your neck, you tie a rag soaked in vinegar knot to keep the stench out entirely. But to make it survivable, you tuck your feet into iron-capped boots, caked with old lime and muck. On your hands, fingerless gloves. The fingertips need to stay exposed. You need to feel the brick. Your tools are simple. A long-handled rake, a coal oil lantern, a scraper, a thick bristled brush, and a spade. You carry them like a knight with his armor. Today, it's Fleet Street. The drain sits between a butcher's stall and a print shop. No one pays attention as you lift the lid. No one wants to think about what lies below. The only shining thing about you is the brass tag. The sewer entrance is a hole in the street, covered by a heavy iron grate. You lower your lantern, then your rake. You've slipped before. Once cracked a rib on the second rung from the bottom. Since then, you move slowly, deliberately. One boot at a time. You set your lantern down, roll up your sleeves, and plunge your gloved hands in. You've been told this is progress, Joseph Bazelget's great sewer project. But this part of the city is still old. The tunnels here were laid decades ago, and some bits are just widened cesspits. Then yourself. You catch the wall, steady yourself, and smile grimly. The ladder is slick. Below, the darkness breathes. The walls glisten. The brickwork is damp, bulging in places. The water, if you can call it that, reaches your calves. It is thick, but for testing the air, you hold it close to the surface. If it flares too fast, fire damp. If it dies, black, damp, brown, full of things best not named. Fat, hair, old blood, bits of cloth, bones. Sometimes, you begin walking upstream. You listen, gurgling. That's a good sign. You say a prayer, not for the dog, for yourself. Silence. That means blockage. You find your first one 20 yards in. A clot of rags, cabbage leaves, and something vaguely meat-like jammed into a corner. You eat a cold potato and half a crust of bread. You drink water from a tin flask and try not to smell your hands. You scrape, you pull. They said it was repaired. They lied. You can see the cracks still weeping liquid like a wound. You gag, but you don't stop. A rush of black water spills past your boots as the clot gives way. It nearly knocks you over. One done. You keep going. There are worse things than clots. Gas. For one, you carry a candle stub in your pouch not for light. Right now, it flickers steadily. You continue. Deeper in. The tunnel narrows. The ceiling drops. You crouch. You find a dead dog. Hairless. Bloated. caught in a bend of pipe. You remove it with a spade. You can feel sores beginning where your belt rubs your hip. You don't think about how long it's been there. Near noon, you stop beneath a ventilation shaft. Sunlight spears down from the street above. It looks like holiness licensed through filth and steam. A rat skitters by, big as a cat. You don't flinch. You used to. Now you only flinch at things that don't move. Like the hand you once found, still wearing a ring. You reported it, of course. They thanked you, then told you to keep scraping. You reach a bend in the tunnel. You know this one. It's where a pipe bursts last week. You mark it with chalk. Someone else will fix it. Maybe you clear 3 more clogs before you turn back. Your clothes weigh twice what they did when you entered. Your boots squished with each step. You climb the ladder slowly. Street sounds, return clopping hooves, shouted prices, distant whistles. You emerge like a mole, covered in black. People move aside. Some pretend not to see you. You wipe your face with a cloth and let the sun burn off the worst of the stench. You return to the depot, sign your name, and leave your tools to be rinsed. You pass by a newsboy shouting about Prince Albert's speech. You laugh. Albert didn't mention men like you. He never will. But without you, this city drowns. Without you, it chokes. You walk home slowly. You peel off your clothes with a stick. You soak in vinegar water for as long as your landlady allows. You sleep on straw that smells faintly of ammonia. And tomorrow, you do it again. Because someone must go where the filth goes. And someone must carry the brush. The next morning arrives before your limbs have forgiven yesterday. Your bones protest as you sit up on the straw mat. Your back crackles. Your feet feel bruised, but the job doesn't wait. And neither does the sewer. You dress again. Same uniform. Now stiff with the grime of repeated wear. You swish it in vinegar and lime water first, trying to kill off what the wash basin couldn't. There's a strange comfort in the routine. A ritual of sorts. You scrub your hands even before the work begins. Today, you're reassigned to the High Holborn line, a stretch of tunnel that runs beneath one of the busier market avenues in the city. The shopkeepers above sling meat and leather, silks and shoes. They never think about what lies underfoot. The muck flows quietly beneath the clatter of horse carts and the shouting of fish. You arrive at the entrance, mid-morning, lantern and rake in hand. These older parts were laid by men who never dreamed London would grow so fat and so foul. The brick walls are crumbling in places. The ceiling bows inward like it's breathing slowly. The water, if you dare call it that, is already up to your knees. The iron grate is lifted with help from a fellow flusher named Thomas. Thin, loud, missing 2 T's. He talks too much, but you don't mind. Down there, voices can mean the difference between life and death. You've been here before. Last month, it flooded waist high after a storm. You lower your tools, then yourself. You gag, spit, and keep working. Again. The tunnel is tighter than yesterday. Thomas mutters. God's teeth. It stinks worse than a cholera ward. You check for gas with your candle. It flares orange for a moment, then returns. Safe enough. You grunt in agreement. You know this section S. Trouble an awkward bend where flow slows and clots like blood behind a bad valve. You reach the bend. It's wedged into a side crevice, bobbing gently. You pull it free. Inside is a child's toy, a wooden horse, with a broken leg. You stare at it longer than you should. It's worse now. A blockage the size of a barrow has formed fat, straw, food scraps, bones, rags, and something you don't want to name. Thomas raises an eyebrow. Want the honors? You roll up your sleeves. The rake sinks with a wet schlup into the mat. It doesn't budge. You both freeze. You've heard this before. Once it preceded a collapse that buried a man up to the waist. They had to pull him out with ropes. His leg never healed. You lean in with your shoulder. You push. It breaks suddenly, and a rush of black slurry surges past you both. It's warm. It splashes into your mouth. You laugh bitterly, wiping your face with your sleeve. London's kiss. Thomas chuckles. Better than a French one. You move along. The tunnel branches into a lower culvert. This one half collapsed, with signs of rat tunnels above the brick vault. You crawl through. Your boots slip on the slimy stone. You grip the wall. Maybe. The light of day slices through your eyes like a blade. Here you find a strange object, a bundle wrapped in oil. Thomas leans over. Someone flushed more than waste. Culvert. Unstable. Object found. You don't answer. The weight of the tunnel lingers. Even up here, you set the toy on the ledge and move on. Halfway through the shift, the roof gives a groan, a low, wet rumble like a sigh from the bowels of the earth. Thomas shines the lantern upward. You see it, a crack spidering across the arch, where moisture and time have eaten through the mortar. You back out, slowly, carefully. A rat scurries by, carrying a crust of bread in its teeth. You watch it disappear into the hedge. No sudden sounds, no hammering. When you're 20 feet clear, you exhale. You mark the wall with chalk. Unstable, you'll report it. Someone will fix it. You return to the surface 2 hours later, clothes soaked and boots heavy. A vendor wrinkles his nose. A child points. A policeman steps aside without speaking. You are part of the city, but beneath it. Invisible. Essential. At the depot, you record your section. Blockage cleared. You turn in your rake. Sharpen your scraper for tomorrow. You sit on a bench behind the shed and scrape grime from under your nails. London is always hungry. You sip tepid tea from a tin mug, and your hand shakes just a little. Thomas lights a pipe. Do you ever think about getting out? Doing something different? You don't answer immediately. Then you say, "What else would you do?" He shrugs. "Anything where the air doesn't move like soup." You both laugh. Tired. Not bitter. Because the truth is, no one thinks about the sewer men until they're gone. And when they are, the whole city stinks. So, you finish your tea. You walk home slowly, and you sleep with the image of that toy horse in your mind, floating in the black. Your final shift of the week begins before the sun breaks over the fog-wrapped city. It's the sort of damp morning where the whole of London feels soaked through. Chimneys coughing smoke, gutters dripping, breaths rising like steam from every soul still brave enough to work. You're assigned to Thames Street today, down near the docks. It's the oldest stretch of sewer still in daily use, parts of it dating back to Roman foundations. The tunnels down here are meaner, smaller, closer to the river and closer to collapse. And yet, they say, this is the modern age. The Thames is only 100 feet above you, separated by nothing more than a few feet of earth and masonry. You'd laugh if your ribs didn't still ache from last month's slip. You meet your crew at the depot. Just 3 of you today. Thomas is out with fever. Probably caught something from last week's chest deep blockage in High Holborn. His absence leaves a gap, but you say nothing. Everyone's replaceable down here. Everyone except the brick. You lower yourself down into the grate just past the custom house. The smell hits first. Stronger than usual. You gag. Pull the vinegar-soaked rag tighter over your mouth and keep moving. Your lantern casts flickering light over the tunnel's ancient walls. Names are scratched into the brick. Initials. Years. Little marks left behind by long-gone sewer men. You see JT minus 1836. Near the entrance, you remember him. An old merchant tunnel now converted into part of the system. Rats love it. So do smugglers. Then your spade, scraping the buildup away from the arch of the tunnel. The flow begins to stir again. Or at least, you remember hearing about him. Fell into a flooded pipe during a spring storm. They never found the body. You wonder how many bones are built into the city. Your boots splash through standing water, thick with grease and something else. You try not to think about what. There's a blockage reported near the wine cellars, and so does the waste. It clogs in strange ways here. Bottlenecks. Pressure. When it breaks loose, it surges like a tidal wave of filth. You brace yourself as you round the bend. The heat fades quickly. leaving only the sound of distant dripping and the thump of your own heart. Sure enough, it's worse than expected. A mass of refuse. Leather straps, potato peelings, shattered crates, a small dead pig wedged into a side sluice. You mutter something coarse under your breath and get to work. You use the long rake first, dislodging the bigger pieces. Then it hits a pocket of trapped gas. The air changes. You freeze. The flame on your lantern flickers, then gutters low. Your fingers tighten, Stu. You know what comes next. You duck low. Too late, a burst of methane ignites somewhere down the pipe. Not an explosion. More like a thump in your chest. Your lantern flares, then dies. You're plunged into blackness. You kneel, pressing a hand to the slick floor, then relight your flame. It catches. The tunnel glows again. The blockage, gone. Blown through, but the air now reeks of scorched hair and cooked fat. You heave, but hold it back. You move on, farther in. You reach the old Roman drainer, narrow, arched tunnel, with stones rubbed smooth by centuries. The air is cool here. This is the part no one likes. To quiet, you feel the weight of history above your head, brick, bone, and time pressing down. You scrape at lichen buildup on the walls. You record a crack with chalk. You spot a loose iron support and mark it for repair. And something odd, a sound, like whispering. You stop. Listen. Just a flow. Just the rats. Or maybe not. You remind yourself, there are no ghosts, only gas leaks dripping walls, and the echo of your own breath. Still, your skin crawls. You turn back, not in fear, just in caution. As you retrace your steps, you pass the initials again. J thinki kaseri budlapan ratas tigapulanam. You add yours beside it. Just initials, nothing more. No dates. If someone finds this tunnel 100 years from now, let them wonder. Let them know you were here, even if they don't know who you were. Back at the ladder, you emerge into a light drizzle. The smell of roasted chestnuts from a vendor's cart almost makes you dizzy. It's too sweet. After so much foulness, you hand in your tools. You sign the ledger. You scratch your name beside the line marked completed. Nobody thanks you, but they nod. That's enough. You walk home with the Thames to your right, flowing like time itself. Gray, relentless, rising and falling with secrets. You think about that toy horse from a few days ago, about the initials on the wall, about JT. You wonder what someone might think. Centuries from now, if they stumble on your mark in the sewer, will they understand? Will they know the river once depended on men who scraped its bowels clean? You undress slowly. You soak your hands. You pour tea. You reach your room. And just before sleep takes you, heavy and whole, you remember a whisper in the dark. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was the tunnel talking back. Either way, you'll return. Because someone must walk beneath the city. Someone must carry the light. And someone must keep the sewers breathing.